All right, looks like we're good to go. People are still just joining, so I'm going to hesitate for like 30 more seconds, and then I'll go ahead and start opening things up. All right, people are joining, and I see Zhao just joined, and he's got the first question. So I was going to go ahead and let you verbalize. And then I think having read it, I might actually defer to some of the folks on the SRE team. But welcome to the SRE AMA for Friday, March 6th.
Hi, thank you. So questions in regards to how to deal with controlled errors on Sentry. So basically, to give a little bit of context, I'm testing a feature flag on GitLab.com that I enabled this morning. And this feature will raise a controlled error to Sentry. And especially now that we're watching how the feature flag enabled behaves, I think this error is super useful considering we can get not only the exact project and controller method that relates to it, but also the user that got affected by it. Since this is a controlled error, which I expect to happen from time to time, so it should keep happening, and I think it's okay to happen. What is your preferred take on how to deal with this on Sentry? So here's a couple of suggestions. Should we ignore this error on Sentry? Should we ignore until the next end users get affected? So we get alert, okay, so this is happening too much. And should we move this error to be a metric instead of an error so we can track it another way? Or do we usually do this something else, deal it in another manner? So that's it.
Sure, I can take this one, David. So I'm Ben, I'm on the observability team, or observability working group. We don't actually have any kind of active alerting or SLO kind of behavior with Sentry. It's kind of an available debugging resource, but we don't act directly on anything that we get in Sentry. So there's no nobody will get paged if you send stuff to Sentry at this time. So it's totally fine to just it's kind of ignored by default. Everything that goes to Sentry is just kind of there and available for debugging when we get alerted that there are problems other ways. So typically we have the Prometheus metrics that are available for the alerting pipeline, and that's what actually pages SREs for problems. And so one of the things that we might do is look in Sentry to see if we're getting errors. Then we'll go and look and see if there's anything new in Sentry. And so I think it's fine to just do it the way you've done it. That's actually great. I love having controlled errors and controlled messages to catch these. If it is, I guess I don't know enough about what the feature flag and the error is as to whether this is critical enough that we should have a metric for it and have some kind of SLO for this error. So that's up to you. I encourage anybody in development to add Prometheus metrics for things that they think are important enough that users are going to be very, very badly affected if nobody pays attention to an error.
Thanks. That's answered my question really well. Thanks, Ben. So I think we can keep the error there just for debugging purpose whenever we need.
Love it.
Yeah, cool.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, that's a good one. There's a reasonable number of people here. No other questions so far. Happy to take anybody who just wants to go ahead and ask one.
I've got a very quick ask, David.
Sure.
Barely worth typing. A customer has hired, one of our strategic customers in EMEA has hired their first couple of SREs, and they've asked if they could chat to someone on our side about running an SRE team.
Oh, sure. I think we're always open to having those kinds of conversations. I think we actually do have a issue template now under the infrastructure tracker for requests for calls, which, you know, it's an open thing. I'll go ahead and link that in the agenda here when I'm done talking. But yeah, go ahead and propose that, and we can talk through Brent or Anthony or I as starting points. Although I think I'd also be happy to add other just regular SREs to the team, because I think it's good perspective to not only have it from the management perspective, but from the team members.
Perfect. David, thank you very much.
So this is a loaded question because I kind of know the answer already, but I figured I'd give somebody a chance to talk about it. In the previous AMA, we talked about how is Puma going. For people who don't know, we've been moving our Rails stack from a multi-process to a multi-process, multi-threaded serving mode, and I'm hoping somebody that worked on that can talk about the current state. Jarv, you here? I guess I can go ahead and answer my own question. It's done. We finished rolling out Puma, and now we have a significant amount of improved Rails capacity without as much additional cost. And actually, it should reduce our cost in terms of how many web pages we can serve for how many CPUs and memory we spend on it. So awesome job all around to the SREs and developers that collaborated to get that done.
Do you have any handy dashboard links we can share real quick?
Oh, sure. Good question. Yes, let me see if I can find it.
Oh, because yeah, I know during the transition we had some cool side-by-side showing Unicorn versus Puma. So I don't know if we still have those, or also just showing the status on the new multi-threading. That's cool.
It's maybe also worth mentioning that the fact that we're now running multi-threaded processes means that there's now more subtle opportunities for resource contention, such as, for example, starvation for connection pools.
Hey, Matt, since maybe you could expand upon what that means in terms of like how that would affect customers or
My network connection is a little flaky. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Your audio is fine.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, sure. So that means that, for example, if so within a Puma process, as I understand it, only one thread is actively running on CPU at a time. But when the thread enters a wait state, like for a remote service call, another thread can open up, can switch on CPU. But any logical resources held by the thread that just went off CPU are retained by that thread. So, for example, any finite resource pool falls into this category, but it's kind of easier to talk about it in terms of connection pools. So if any individual thread can consume, I'm going to make these numbers up, can consume up to 3 database connections concurrently, and that's then another thread can do the same. If we don't have a maximum number of connections that if the high water mark ever exceeds the provisioned capacity in the connection pools, then one thread could end up waiting while even in a wait state, even though it would otherwise be runnable. Does that make sense? This is so much easier with a whiteboard.
Take some notes. Yeah.
As far as I know, I know there was extensive discussion about this prior to rolling Puma out, and I was in and out of that discussion, so I don't know where we settled on the sizing for the connection pools. But I'm just as a specific concrete example. But really, I just wanted to call it out because the nature of resource contention got a little bit more complex, and or interesting as a result of trying to leverage the greater efficiencies of having multiple threads within the process. This is super normal for multi-threaded applications. It's not a problem. It's just interesting.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so here's, I don't have a dashboard for this, but I pulled up one of the more interesting statistics that I love about the change to Puma. And so I'm going to share my screen. And so this is the current state of queuing, which is anytime we're getting a request for something to be done on the API or the web, and instead of starting to work on that request, we've just put it in a queue to wait. And you can see that while we were running on Unicorn, we would have quite high spikes of hundreds of requests during the day to just waiting. And now with Puma, it's almost nothing. And so basically, we can now, as soon as a request comes in through the web or the API, Ruby can start working on that without having to contend on the resource. And of course, this is all done through our Prometheus metrics. And so you can see that certain parts of our stack had more queuing than others.
Hey everyone, I had a question. It was related to the recent announcement from Google in terms of their plans to of how they plan to price their Kubernetes clusters consumption, and we have plans on migrating most of GitLab's components to Kubernetes clusters, right? So just wanted to get a sense of, did you all see that come in? Is it a complete surprise? And how you all plan to, try to keep costs low and still complete the migration?
I think we're probably, hi, I'm on the observability working group as well. I'm Craig. I think we're probably going to spend far more on the node pools than the charge for the control plane. I think that it's 10 cents an hour, so $72 per month per cluster. And we're only going to have one cluster per environment, maybe two if we have to split something like logging out. So it'll probably be a rounding error in our GCP bill. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So it doesn't seem as if it would cause major impact to your plans. And do you see?
I really need to answer. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say that. Do you see other cloud providers implementing a similar pricing approach to Kubernetes and managing clusters in their cloud?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know what the charges are on comparable cloud offerings like from Amazon.
If anyone's interested, this is Brandon. I can answer that question. I lead up the alliances, so I get to do a bunch of this, and was with the team at Google before. So this was a backtrack on Google, which is a poor choice because you should never put something free and then charge for it. Generally, that's a bad idea. I think what a lot of people didn't realize is generally what we're doing isn't what everyone does, which is large Kubernetes clusters, and a few of them. Other people have treated Kubernetes clusters like their VMs. And so that overhead rapidly kind of gets different. Cost-wise, Azure pulled this off and Google responds. So Azure Container Service was like, hey, we're going to give this for free. Google responded, Amazon never has. Amazon has always charged something for the control plane, so for EKS. So this continues to be with EKS, and with GK, they're now more or less in line with what is standard with the two, with those two, Azure being different. you can make some guesses on that. I have assumptions as to why Azure's has remained free, but all sorts of interesting questions we can chat about. But context-wise, I hope that helps. There you go.
Yeah, it does seem to have ruffled a few feathers. Like being a fixed cost per cluster, it punishes architectures that have many clusters, like maybe even single tenancy per cluster, that kind of thing. Luckily, that's not us, so we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest impact or concern from our end was we have quite a lot of Kubernetes demo clusters and test clusters that we were spinning up and just leaving because they were free. Now we're going to have to track and shut them down and tell people to create life cycles for their demos and tests.
That's a really good observation. So yeah, that's for all of our SAs and all the other teams. That's a good catch, Ben. Good point.
All right, I think John Mason, you were typing a question in there about extra monitoring. I was just making sure I caught you there.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, I was just curious with some of those subtle cases, if we had to add additional alerts or monitors to catch some of those cases we were concerned about.
This is back to the Puma things. I don't actually know, Matt, if you've seen us how to create any new alerts around resource contention yet.
I'm not aware of new alerts. There was I didn't feel it was necessarily appropriate to speculate in this forum, but there was one regression event that I thought might possibly have been related to resource contention within between green threads and Puma, but I wasn't present to collect data, and we didn't have the right tooling installed anyway at the time to collect evidence to refute that hypothesis. So so at this point, I'm not aware of any regressions.
Yeah, no, and from a rollout process, to answer your question a little more, John Mason, we did roll this out gradually across the fleet. And I think Ben was trying to ask, when he was asking for Jarv, asking that question. Jarv was one of the people involved in the rollout. So I think they may have discovered some things in that rollout. I was not deeply involved on that. So as we did gradually roll out across the fleet, they may have discovered some things and added. We definitely added some new graphs and things, but I'm not sure if we added any new alerts.
Yeah, that was my impression as well. Like particularly the concurrency level, I think was a topic of great debate, where there's arguably some benefit even to having Puma with one thread, but being able to scale it to 2 or more threads per process was anyway a topic of discussion. I think different people had strong differing views on that, and I did not have a strong opinion, so I can't really voice any more thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you.
Brandon, I think you're up.
Just a tactical question so I don't bug people. And this is actually mostly because I feel like I bug you, Dave, far too often. Just a good place if we're looking for priorities and timing on, when are we moving to Kubernetes and stuff. I'd love to just read it and not have to ask questions. And that's probably on me. But if you guys have a place you guys would say, I'd love to just go do my homework correctly.
I could give some places at the moment, but I feel like that's actually likely, Ben's typing epics. I think there are certain epics where we're trying to coalesce information on projects that we're working on that are longer lived than a particular month or quarter. The other thing I would say though is, and it was brought up in the group conversation actually yesterday by Jerry, with the new VP coming in, I'm kind of waiting to see how they want to organize some of that stuff. So I'll answer with the epics and things that we do have around that, and then that structure also across, what is the delivery team working on with their things related to Marin. So some of those questions are, it's going to have to tactically filter from director level down to manager level of like, what particular project are we looking at? A lot of things related to Kubernetes are actually working on with the delivery team and with Marin's team. So that's why, when we went back and forth on that, I actually redirected you that way.
Yep, that was helpful. Okay, I'll follow the epics And
Yeah, and I
literally-
expect as we start to figure out, as we kind of establish our management structure a little better in the coming months, I don't know, better is not the right word, but it's going to be different just as we have a new VP of infrastructure and things. I think we'll have a way that we want to organize that and share it that we'll be updating. Cool. We're at 10 minutes left. No further questions, although I see, oh,
I'm going again, which I feel bad, but if no one
go
else
for
is,
it.
have you all looked? So when I say Kubernetes, we're like, oh, JGK. I'm curious on the team. Have you all looked at Anthos and all the other pieces that they offer above it? If so, what are your thoughts? If not, totally fair, but I'm just curious if anyone's poked around the managed Istio and all the other parts that they like around Anthos and your thoughts. And the answer can be don't have any, it's fine. I'm just curious.
At my level, I can say I don't have any, but I know Ben and some other people probably have some thoughts.
Actually, I'd never heard of it.
I was going to say, if we've looked at it, it's been primarily at an individual level, and I haven't heard of anything amongst the team where we've had any kind of concerted effort to consider something like that strategically. We're primarily focused on just moving initial batches of services over to Kubernetes first, accepting minor inefficiencies along the way, and then those sorts of things would be iterative improvement.
Okay.
And then to add to what little I do know of Anthos too, I think we would actually love to have some other input from the company and the business in terms of what we want to do for business continuity and things like that. Anthos could have a hand in managing Kubernetes clusters if we decided to go with a multi-cloud strategy or something like that. So I think, again, as we emerge our strategy on what we want to do with those things, that's where Anthos would have a picture. But yeah, I agree with Craig. It's been more tactical around just getting individual services, like as we adapt elements of the chart for GitLab into GitLab.com, I'd say like at the 1,000-foot level instead of that 10,000-foot level.
Okay. And then probably at the 10,000-foot level to my levels, right? Sounds like, is that something that maybe a month or two out would be worth digging into and just spending like a brainstorming session? Would that be of help? Would you guys like to do that?
Yeah, I think that would be good. For us to try to figure out what we want to do there.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah,
I'll take that as my to-do.
Especially as Dave mentioned earlier, within the context of getting a new VP coming in, I imagine that would be a natural extension of conversations that we had around guiding strategic initiatives over the next 2-3 quarters.
Chuck, I'll take that as my to-do, and I'll figure that part out. And just you guys know, then you guys let me know timing, but I'll work on that for you if that's of help.
All right. Well, great. Given the time, I think we're very close to the 5 minutes till the end of the hour anyway. So thanks everybody for your questions, and hope you all have a good day and a good weekend.